Hi, y'all. It's Bridget Cutshaw with Real Things Living. Today, my guest is Paul Sewell. Sorry, he's the founder of a nonprofit called Seven Wells. Paul, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, it's an honor to be on your podcast, Bridget. And like you said, I'm Paul, and I do nonprofit work with Seven Wells, which is a surprising work for me. I started off as an engineer and had my dream engineering job when I was 20 and traveled the world and sold software and found out it didn't satisfy me deeply. And I went on a spiritual journey, and ultimately that led me to the work I'm doing now, where I mentor college students and really people of all ages now and come alongside them in their spiritual journey.
I think it's so important. You're kind of helping. Well, you found out what your purpose should be in life and you're trying to help others. I think that's kind of really what it is, right?
That's
Um,
exactly right.
where do the words seven wells come? I'm just kind of curious what the meaning is behind that.
Yeah, it's a double meaning. The first one is a play off my last name. My last name is Sewell, which is a
Uh-huh.
family name that comes from a place in England called Sewell. It's about 45 minutes north of London. But back in the Old English, that place was called Ciowella, which in the Old English is seven wells.
Oh, that is so
So
cool.
it's a play off our last name. It's also has a meaning where it's a reference to Jesus, where he offers living water and satisfaction to everybody who's thirsty. And so it's a bit of a metaphor of thirsty people can find
I, th- I,
satisfaction at the well.
I thought it had something to do with water, but I love that. I think having the a purpose behind or a meaning behind the name is really helpful. And one of the reasons you and I have known each other for several years, and I've been following you on your journey here. And then this year has been crazy for a lot of people, and yours is extreme. And you were open to share this. It is all started off, was it in January, I think, of this year? You lived in Atlanta. That's kind of how we met. And then was it an apartment or a condo was like covered in or had mold in it, like really bad mold. Can you share how this, and then I think you guys were all getting sick and didn't understand. And so you kind of dug deeper and find out what the problem was going on.
Yeah, that's exactly right. January was the real eye-opening time, but I could even back up a little bit more than that and say in
Yeah.
October, our 5-year-old son Caspian was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And that was a life-changing moment for us. That's a disease where it takes 24/7 management with insulin and food and everything. And so we were in the very first month of that, and we were just exhausted. And my wife went into the bedroom to rest, and I was in the kitchen, and I heard what sounded like a bucket of water poured out in our master bedroom. And I went in there, and sure enough, there had been a roof leak that had filled up the ceiling with a bubble, a bucket-sized bubble of water, and the
Oh,
paint was holding it back, and then it just burst and fell into the home. And so we were in a condo, and it was a 3-story condo with an HOA that owns the roof, and they were inexplicably slow in getting a roofer out. And so 10 days later, roofer came out and fixed it, only he didn't, and we didn't know that. And then
great.
over the next 3 months, the roofer came many times and just couldn't solve the problem. And then we got sick over and over and over. I thought I just had the flu for
Right.
10 or 15 days. And then we got the flu again. And then we got the flu again 3 times one winter. We said, you know what, this isn't the flu. And we did so then we figured out it was mold and got a mycotoxins test, and it was off the chart, terrible, cancer causing brain damage levels.
Oh,
and
wow.
and so that's when we did an emergency move out of our condo in Midtown Atlanta.
And then you moved to a different state at the time to kind of help your family recover to heal.
Yeah, that's right. We went to the mountains of North Carolina for 2 months, and then the coronavirus hit, and everything went. It was the first week or two when everything started going to lockdown, and the world really didn't know what was going to happen. And we were out of time in the cabin we could stay in. We couldn't stay there anymore.
Right.
And so shelter in place orders had just come down, but we had no place. So how do you shelter in
Right,
place?
right. Shelter.
So we found a temporary home in Auburn, Alabama, next to Auburn University, where we had lived before Atlanta, and went there for 2 months. And then the craziest thing happened. Alicia came home from the grocery store and said, "It smells like mold in here." And we'd been sick for about 2 weeks. She
Oh,
said, find it. We're getting out. And I went looking, and this house that was super clean 2 months earlier had developed a roof leak. A boot dried out on a vent, and it leaked down into the room I'd
Oh,
made my
wow.
office. And it happened again. So we lost everything we owned twice, lost our home twice. And then we said, what is God doing here? And that led us on a journey
Right.
to not just try to survive, but to actually thrive, and to see these
Mhm.
adverse circumstances, not just to make it out of them, but make it out of them with a life that's better than where we started from.
Right. That is, I'm just still in shock. And you had mentioned one time to me that you lost all your stuff because it was all basically covered in mold.
Yeah,
Um, you started from scratch
we
all
we
over.
started from scratch. We didn't know anything about it, how sick mold makes you, or how to treat it. I just thought we'd move from the place with the roof leak, and that would solve our problem. But after doctor visits and research, we learned that everything porous was contaminated by mold, and if we went to a clean new home, we would just take the problem with us. So, you
Correct.
know,
Yeah.
we were able to wash our clothes and mold treat those, and then some real hard surface type things like some kitchen equipment, but all furniture, all my glorious library that I loved so much, wedding albums, photos, art on the walls, and I think I said the furniture. So anything porous, anything with a
Right.
motor that would suck in air, all that was
Right.
contaminated and had to be thrown
Wow.
away. So when we finally settled, and there's kind of more in the journey to get to where we settled, but we settled a month ago, and it felt like we were brand new newlyweds with a empty
Right.
apartment.
Started from scratch, and you have two little kids to top it
Two.
off. And then you are so, I to me think you are so lucky that you didn't have to, you had your own business, and that really helped you a lot. But at the same time, still having to run your business and deal with all these personal problems and deal with COVID. And then your son is, did you had mentioned that he's actually got a little bit better once you moved out of in a different environment, right?
Yeah, it turned out that as horrible as type 1 diabetes is in a 5-year-old, it turns out that he was like our canary in a coal mine.
Okay.
Where we left Auburn, and then we were just looking for a new place to settle long term, and went to Colorado for a month, and the air quality was really good out there in the Roaring Forks Valley by Aspen, and his blood sugar numbers, which we manage and watch all day long, went down after he got out of the mold. And then we went to Utah, and it turned out to be very polluted next to Salt
Wow.
Lake City, and his blood sugar numbers went up. And so we could tell, and then we started learning about air quality of cities, and we learned that Atlanta, especially in Midtown where we live, was a quite polluted city,
Yeah.
and had bad air quality. And so we found that the high mountain country of Colorado was really good air quality. Near Salt Lake City was really bad. And then we went to Washington and Oregon and Idaho, and then eventually to where we settled now in the Ozarks in Bentonville, Arkansas. And the air quality is great. And we can see what kind of stress the pollution's putting on, I think, all of our bodies, but we can
Right.
measure in Caspian's body. And so that really helped guide us to a healthy place to live.
I think that right. You just to me, you're looking at the good side of things. You're expecting the good to come out of something, and I really like that attitude. And I'm so glad your son's doing better. I'm so glad you guys finally found a place to stay. And ooh, you had mentioned it's like an agrihood that you're living in now. Is
Yes.
that the right word? It's like around a big farm, and
That's exactly right. So it's called an agrihood, and so about a mile from downtown Bentonville is a community, and it's apartments and townhomes, but it also has a 2-acre working farm, a business, and then they have a farm stand and like a CSA where we order vegetables every week, so we can walk out and work on the farm, as volunteers, and see the chickens, and it's chickens and vegetables. And so a lot of our meals are what we call hyper local. It's from the farm. We can see outside our windows, and that's kind of the life we were dreaming of. My wife loves to cook, and she loves local ingredients. It's naturally grown. It's not full of you know
right.
pesticides and Roundup and all that stuff. And it's pick ripe, and we can shake the hand of the farmer and even help him in our little ways.
Oh, that is so cool the way you're thinking about that. And you had also like to do a lot of mountain biking too. I'm kind of jumping around here because you had mentioned me that you're right close to some big trails, which that is like heaven for you because you're a big mountain biker.
It is. This is a beautiful place for mountain bikes. Here in the Ozarks, the Walton Family Foundation, the Walton family that started Walmart, has donated quite a lot of money to build trails in this area. This is where their headquarters is. And so they're building an average of 2 miles of new single track trail every day. And so it's, when I lived in Midtown Atlanta, I love to get into nature. And I think that's a part of our healing and,
Right.
and a way to connect with God and find quiet in the kind of the busy world. But I would have to commute 45 minutes to go get my bike on a mountain bike trail. And then sometimes it'd take an hour and a half to get home. And that was what the urban environment was. But here, there's trails everywhere. In fact, on my way to the office this morning, I rode a single track trail. I had my backpack, my
That's
computer,
awesome.
my work clothes, and my full face helmet. And I don't call it heading to work anymore. I call it shredding to work. So, I
Shredding.
hit jumps and berms and rollers, and there's, I think, 350 miles of trail that I can ride to out my door. And so one of the things we were looking for, and it's kind of a dream place. It's like Disneyland for mountain bikers. But the bigger picture that I think is applicable for everybody is that we wanted nature to be a part of our everyday life.
Right.
We went to Denver, looked at, living there, and we were talking to our friends and other people that live in Denver, and it was like they would commute to the mountains on Saturdays. And it was a drive from the city, into the mountains.
Right.
And we said, that's good, but we wanted to be a little bit of our day every day. We want a life that was integrated with nature, where it wasn't a commute to go get there. And we don't like driving in cars and anyway. And it seems a little bit, sometimes, I go to the nature to rest, to be refueled. And then I get on,
Back on the highway.
Atlanta's I-85, and it's, thousands of pounds of metal flying at me, and it's quite stressful.
I just can't imagine. I mean, yeah, I'm so happy that you found this route. It unfortunately had to deal with a lot of crazy crap. I mean, it's just insane. But you guys are persistent. You guys are resilient. That's really what it's about. And you had ideas and you found a solution to help your family. And it's not just, it's great that the mountain biking, I see it as a bonus, right?
Right.
Because you had to make sure your family was healthy. And so I'm sure your kids will really enjoy that area they're growing up in. And I've never really heard about Walmart family doing that. And maybe it's because I live in Georgia and not in Arkansas, but I really think more companies should help in that regard. And I really think that's a good idea.
It's a beautiful thing we've seen is a private foundation with
Yeah.
wealth, and there's people have that everywhere, and they're working with the local government to say,
Yes.
hey, we don't want to just build trails out in the middle of nowhere. Can we build it into the infrastructure of the city?
Yes.
And so the local government really has a vision to help small businesses start, to be an incubator for that, and to create a quality of life here that's really just quite beautiful, and that can be oriented around nature and around bikes, and cars are certainly here too, but it's not like the car is king and pedestrians and bikes aren't. And so it's a great model for cities everywhere, I think.
Well, I think what you're describing is probably going to be growing more because of what's happening. And we're all going to have to adjust all the time. But this COVID just put it in amplified speed, right? And trying to figure out what we need to do. So how does all this, now that you're in Arkansas, and you have your own little, like a co-share office,
Yep.
and how does this affect your business? I'm assuming you still have to do some traveling. Or is it a lot of video calls maybe still, right?
It will involve some traveling, and we do have a heart for the places and the people we've mentored in our previous places, like
Right,
Atlanta
right.
and Auburn being our last two over the last 7 years. But an interesting thing happened. So I've been coaching college students and young adults in person for many years now, and then I was doing it with other nonprofits, and I started my own Seven Wells 4 years ago. And then a crazy thing happened in 2019. I got the idea of the training and the teaching and the coaching that I do in person with groups all in the same room. I had the idea to turn that into an online course. So in 2019, I spent the summer, and Bridget, if I remember right, you were in a mastermind group with us where y'all
Yes,
helped
Yes.
accountable to
Yes.
moving the project forward. And
Yes.
so I spent probably 6 months in 2019 creating the Enjoying Jesus course and
Mhm.
making it all available online. And so I created it, and I wasn't quite sure what to do with it. And then when COVID hit and everybody went to lockdown, I said, this is why I have the course. So the first 8 courses I ran in person with people, and then cohort 9 and cohort 10, I ran fully online and open
Wow.
source. So I started it in Auburn. I did a meeting from Georgia, and then finished the course in Colorado. And the people were dialing in from all over the US, and even a participant from Germany. And
Wow.
so it turned out to be quite a blessing to be able to still do my work with people. And it's kind of the whole world went that way. I didn't have to kind of explain what Zoom was. And, we do the Zoom, WordPress, and Slack, a structure I learned from the Alt MBA.
Right.
And I just followed that, stole that structure, and then put my spiritual journey content in there, and it's working. So I'm going to keep doing that. In fact, I'm building a cohort for the fall right now, so that I'll have another all online cohort. But then as we settle in here and start meeting people, I'm sure that I'm really looking forward to doing the in-person cohorts as well. And there is a big, awesome university right down the street here, University of Arkansas, the
Wow.
Razorbacks. So stayed in the SEC even when we went from Auburn to here.
That is so funny. I like the way you summarize that. I think it's just your story. This to me is just so uplifting, and it is very. I find it very inspiring. I mean, you have a kind of personality, and I think you have the drive to keep no matter what comes your way. And I think we have one of the things we have in common. We're both are military brats, and we had to deal with a lot of unexpected stuff. And I think that kind of helped. Um, what's the word, not drive us, but build our way of thinking, our mindset. We're used to things being upturned easily. There's good and bad. Some people don't take away the good positive things that you and I have done from that. I think some people, it affects them so much more differently, but again, it's your mindset and who you're around, and sharing that information. And you had, I haven't seen it yet, but you had mentioned a documentary called Brats. I'm going to go check it out. It was done a couple of decades ago. I looked it up. Chris Christopherson was the one that did that film. So is there any other major takeaways from this? I took from this is you're integrating nature for your health overall. And I'm a full believer in that. Is there any other takeaways on
I
this
guess
journey?
one takeaway I've had, and I hope it would be an encouragement to your listeners, is that this process kind of forced us to examine our values and to
Yes.
say, how do we pick a place to live that fits our values? Where
Yeah.
before it was, I would get a job, and where the job was, that's where I would go live. And so my work always, my location of where I lived kind of followed my job. And then we just, even though we had started our own organization, Seven Wells, we were still kind of living in that kind of mentality. And we had not given much thought to our values, and did they actually still fit the place we were living? So what came
Ah,
important to us, and other people might have different values, is a life integrated with nature, with some city cultural type amenities, and of course a place that made sense for my work. And so we went looking for those 3 places, and we found it. It was a kind of a longer journey than we thought it would be. And so one encouragement I'd have for people is to examine your values, and to see, does the place you're living now fit those? And our journey had a lot of hardship in getting to a new place, but going to a new place doesn't have to be hard.
right. I mean, it just helped you make that decision. And I really like the idea that you did travel all the other cities before you got there. Even though you said it was a long journey, you still learned a lot, and your kids probably learned a lot being with you. What kind of vehicle were you in? You have a minivan? I was just curious.
We had a crossover SUV, so
Okay.
a small SUV, and we loaded the thing down. There was like bikes hanging off the back. There was a bike on the top. There was a a cargo box full of, you know, the kids' toys and clothes.
I was thinking you must have had a bike hanging on there. So
That's right. I think the thing was like weighted down. It was probably not the safest way to drive.
oh, but it's so cool. You did it. And I love that adventure aspect that you have, and
Well,
I love I just love your energy. How's that? And it's very
yeah,
inspiring. And that's after you and I, like I said, known each other for a couple years, and I've been following your little newsletter. And that's when your last one, you told me you're at. I'm like, I have got to reach out to Paul and get a little bit more information here. And I just think it's so helpful that that you guys made it through, but your kids made it through because you and your wife are fantastic role models, and that's probably why you're so good, or you're mentoring, you said college students. And when you do that with a college student, is it focused more on the Seven Wells nonprofit? That's really what it is, or is it more help to get through college? That's what I didn't understand.
yeah. It's not so much on how to get through college from like an academic standpoint,
Right,
but college students are at the age where they're, you know, they can make one decision and just change the trajectory of their whole lives. You know,
right.
change a major, accept a job, don't accept a job, you know, propose to the girl your junior year or not. You know, it's real life altering stuff. And so what I do is I come alongside them, not so much in their studies, but in their spiritual journey. And for
I
those that are
gotcha.
interested, I help them discover and follow the ways of Jesus. And then the ways of Jesus actually influence our whole life. It's not like a spiritual compartment and then there's, you know, academic and relationships and career and all this other stuff. It's Jesus teaches this God reality way of living that's your whole life. So it actually involves all the parts of their life once we get into that kind of mentoring relationship. So
Right.
even my wife does this as well. And for her, lots of times it looks like, you know, a young lady coming over and cooking dinner with her and modeling what life with two kids and dinner
That's
and
great.
you know, a journey with Jesus all looks like. And so it's a very holistic sort of mentoring. And there is the course. I usually start it with the 6-week Enjoying Jesus course. And then
Right.
for people that want to journey further, it becomes very customized and relational. But another big part of it is just I'm always coaching people to find their purpose in life and to be a part of healing the brokenness in the world. And often that's different than just being a cog in the corporate machine. And so I help them start nonprofits. I help them move to hard places in the world, like, you know,
You
India
lived it.
or the Middle East or things like that.
I'm, even though I've known you for all these years, I'm still learning, right, from you all the time because you have an open mind, right? Right term, open mindset, and you don't judge. You help people, help guide them, and I think that's what you're doing is so important. And I want to let everybody know what you're doing. And
Uh,
one more question: is your running your nonprofit? Is your wife help you on the side, I guess, or she just focused on the kids? I'm sure. I believe I had two kids too, two sons. They're adults now.
Yeah. Well, before kids, she was, you know, 70 hours a week at the work alongside me. And
Right,
that's and
right.
we loved it. And we were living you know, at that time before our first child, we were living at Auburn and we were right next to campus. We in fact invited the people we were mentoring to move into our condo community, and then
Uh-huh.
they invited their friends. So we had about 52 people in our training groups living right next to us. So it was, you know, everybody was somebody was at our dinner table, you know, three meals a day, not just at dinner. And so it was a very busy and rewarding and exhausting sort of work. And
Right.
then we had our first child, and she still does the work but just with less hours. So she is a
She
old
still has some input, I'm sure. Right?
she does a lot of input,
Yeah.
and but with a priority of you know, mentoring our two children. So she homeschools
Right.
them. They're not really at the age they go to school anyway,
Right.
but
Right.
she's a school teacher, you know, public school teacher, second grade, that's gone from a classroom size of 24 to 2.
Right.
So she's going to
Right.
homeschool them and work in our nonprofit. She still works in it, just with less hours.
Gotcha. And you guys are probably hearing my dog's bark. I apologize, but I think a package must be being delivered. That's the way it is, right?
That's right.
Anyway, Paul, so where can people learn more about you? Is there a website you can refer them to?
Sure. Our home on the web is enjoyjesusmore.com. So
EnjoyJesusMore.com.
enjoyjesusmore.com.
Okay.
And there you will find my email address, my phone number, the description of the Enjoying Jesus course, if that's
Mhm.
of interest to you. And I would love to be at your service, listener. So let me know how I can help.
That is so awesome. I so appreciate your time, Paul, and God bless you and your family.
Blessings to you. Thanks for having me, Bridget.
All right.